You want to know what panic looks like? It's not alarms or sirens. It's world leaders sitting in meetings, sweating bullets, realizing they've built their entire economy on one group of people, and that group just might leave. And who are those people? Filipinos. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. Let me hit you with a truth bomb the world doesn't want to say out loud. If Filipinos decided to stop working overseas for even 1 month, half the global systems you rely on, hospitals, shipping, elder care, customer service, and even aviation would collapse overnight. That's not an exaggeration, that's a fact backed by data. Right now, the Philippines has over 10.2 million overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, spread across more than 170 countries. That's nearly 1 in every 10 Filipinos working abroad, keeping entire economies alive. From nurses in London to engineers in Saudi Arabia, seafarers in the Atlantic to caregivers in Tokyo, the world's comfort depends on Filipino labor. But here's where it gets interesting. Now that more Filipinos are returning home, countries are starting to panic. The United Kingdom, for instance, is facing its worst healthcare staffing crisis in 50 years. The National Health Service, NHS, admitted in its 2025 quarterly report that if even 10% of Filipino nurses went home, it would cripple their hospitals. The same Filipino nurses who once begged for work are now being begged to stay. The UK is now offering fast-track permanent residency, higher pay, and family relocation just to keep Filipinos from leaving. Meanwhile, in Japan, where the population is shrinking faster than anywhere else in Asia, the government literally said this year, and I quote, "The Philippines is our human lifeline. They're increasing Filipino caregiver salaries by 40% and adding free Japanese language programs because they know without Filipino workers, their elderly care system collapses." And if you think that's wild, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Once a country that controlled Filipino labor migration with an iron fist, now they're begging the Philippine government to maintain deployment quotas. Why? Because the Saudi hospitality and construction sectors are losing productivity. The Saudi Chamber of Commerce even stated that Filipino workers are 30% more efficient than their replacements. And guess what? That 30% gap is costing them billions. But the panic isn't just in Asia or the Middle East, it's global. Canada, Italy, Germany, and Australia are all quietly running recruitment campaigns specifically targeting Filipinos. They're advertising in Tagalog. They're offering relocation packages for entire families. Why? Because every nation knows the same truth. Filipinos don't just work, they hold systems together. See, what's happening now is a shift in power. For decades, the world saw Filipinos as replaceable. Oh, we'll just find someone else. But now they can't because no one else combines skill, loyalty, and compassion the way we do. No one else works with heart the way we do. And countries are waking up to that reality a little too late. Just think about the shipping industry. Over 25% of all seafarers on Earth are Filipino. Without them, ports stall, cargo halts, and supply chains crumble. Even the International Chamber of Shipping admitted in their 2025 report that the global economy would face severe disruption without Filipino seafarers. You heard that right, the global economy. And yet, the irony, many of these same nations once ignored or mistreated Filipino workers. They underpaid them, overworked them, and looked down on them. But now, they are calling emergency meetings to figure out how to keep them. Now they realize that the worker they once underestimated is the backbone of their survival. But let's be clear, Filipinos aren't leaving because they want revenge. They're leaving because they're tired. Tired of being undervalued, tired of being treated like tools instead of people, and more importantly, tired of sacrificing everything, family, health, happiness, for nations that only remember them when the work stops. If you're watching this right now and you're one of those OFWs who's ever thought about coming home, this message is for you. The world finally knows your worth. The same countries that once set the rules are now bending them for you, and that should tell you everything you need to know about your power. Filipinos are no longer chasing opportunity. Opportunity is now chasing Filipinos, and that's the new reality. But here's the twist. If countries are panicking to keep Filipinos from leaving, what's the Philippines doing to make them want to stay home? Because that's where the real battle begins. If you're proud of what Filipinos have built across the world, type Prod Pinoy in the comments, because what's happening right now isn't just an economic shift, it's a global reckoning. In the next segment, we're going to expose how this power shift is changing migration itself, and how some countries are going to desperate, even shady lengths to keep Filipinos from ever returning home. Stay right there, it's about to get even more real. Now that the world's finally realizing they can't run without Filipinos, here comes the ugly part, the desperation. Countries are no longer asking Filipinos to stay, they're strategically trapping them. And yes, I said trapping. It's subtle, it's legal on paper, but make no mistake, it's happening everywhere. Let's start with Canada, the so-called land of opportunity. For years, Canada's immigration system has been quietly restructured to secure Filipino labor long-term. The 2025 Immigration Review Report revealed that over 60% of new caregiver visa extensions came from Filipinos. But here's the catch. While the government promotes pathways to permanent residency, the process often takes years. Years where OFWs can't leave their employer without risking deportation. Years of emotional manipulation disguised as policy. Filipinos are filling Canada's labor shortages in healthcare, logistics, and agriculture, but many are stuck in a gray zone between temporary and permanent status. Meanwhile, in the UK, the story gets even darker. Hospitals under the NHS are offering bonuses to Filipino nurses, not just to attract them, but to make sure they never leave. One leaked internal memo, covered by The Guardian, revealed that NHS trusts were told to stabilize dependency on foreign nurses, especially Filipinos, by offering retention perks instead of wage parity. Translation, keep them loyal, but don't pay them like local. And that's exactly what's happening. And you think it stops there? Nope. Japan has mastered emotional entrapment. Their elderly care program recruits thousands of Filipinos every year under the technical intern training program. But many caregivers find themselves in a cultural loop. They're praised as family, yet rarely given real paths to promotion or management roles. They're treated with love, but not equality. That's not partnership, that's psychological manipulation dressed up as respect. But here's where things get dangerous. Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Both countries have begun lobbying behind the scenes for more lenient Philippine deployment agreements. Why? Because they can't afford another labor freeze. When the Philippines suspended deployment to Kuwait last year, their domestic sectors collapsed overnight. 12% labor shortage within 60 days. So now they're rewriting contracts to appear worker-friendly, while quietly adding clauses that make it harder for Filipinos to transfer jobs or return home early. The desperation is everywhere. Countries that once thought of OFWs as expendable labor are now clinging to them like oxygen tanks. And for once, it's not Filipinos begging to stay, it's the other way around. But here's where I want you to open your eyes. This sudden wave of affection, praise, and respect from these nations isn't just gratitude, it's survival, because the math doesn't lie. Japan's workforce shrinks by 800,000 people every year. Germany loses 500,000 workers annually to retirement. The UK has over 110,000 nursing vacancies. Canada needs 1.2 million skilled immigrants by 2030. You see the pattern? They need Filipinos more than ever, not because they love us, but because they have no choice. And yet, what do we do back home? We still treat our returning OFWs like afterthoughts. Every year, tens of thousands come home to no jobs, no support, no financial safety nets. They built the world's hospitals, schools, and cities, but when they return, all they get are applause and broken promises. That's the harsh reality. Filipinos are global lifelines, but local casualties. Here's a story I'll never forget. Maria, a nurse from Iloilo, spent 15 years in London. She sent her kids to school, built her parents a home, even helped her barangay build a small clinic. When she finally came home last year, she said one thing that broke me. They gave me respect abroad, but no place here. That right there, that's the wound no one's talking about. Because the respect Filipinos are finally getting overseas is not yet mirrored at home. We've become global heroes, but national ghosts. And if the government doesn't act fast, that respect will become our curse. Because the more the world depends on us, the more we lose our people to it. Now here's what's even more mind-blowing. Other nations are already predicting a Filipino shortage. The OECD Migration Outlook 2025 warned of increasing competition for Filipino labor. Meaning, rich nations are literally fighting for us. And guess what that means for the Philippines? Brain drain at record levels. We're exporting so much talent that even our local hospitals are short-staffed. 1 in every 4 Filipino nurses now works abroad. That's insane. But you know what's even crazier? We act like it's normal, like it's okay for our best minds to leave while we clap from afar. That's not progress, that's dependency. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about the breaking point. The day Filipinos decide they've had enough. The day countries begging us to stay will face a truth they've been running from for decades. And trust me, when that day comes, the world won't just panic, it'll stop. Now let's talk about the breaking point, the one nobody's ready for. What happens when Filipinos finally say no? When the world's most dependable workforce decides we're done being your safety net? That's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Imagine this, airports go silent, planes are grounded because half the flight crews are Filipino, hospitals across London, Dubai, and Tokyo scramble because their wards are short-staffed overnight, cargo ships stall in international waters because the captains, engineers, and deckhands, mostly Filipinos, didn't show up for deployment. That's not fiction, that's a simulation already discussed at the International Labor Organization in 2025. They called it the Filipino withdrawal scenario, and the projections were terrifying. Within 2 weeks of halted Filipino labor migration, global trade efficiency drops by 26%. In 1 month, nearly 40%. That's how much the world depends on us. But here's the irony. Even with all this power, most Filipinos don't even realize how much leverage they hold. Because for decades, we've been told to be grateful for the job, grateful for the visa, grateful for the opportunity. But the truth is, it's them who should be grateful. We've been the quiet force keeping their world upright while they barely noticed the sacrifices behind it. Think about it. From the nurse in Manchester who works double shifts with a smile, to the seafarer in the Atlantic who hasn't hugged his kids in 8 months, to the domestic worker in Hong Kong who endures loneliness with grace, these are the people who built the modern world. But what happens when grace turns into awakening? When Filipinos start asking, why not invest this same skill, this same loyalty back home? That's the question shaking governments right now. The Philippine Department of Migrant Workers reported that as of mid-2025, more than 200,000 OFWs have voluntarily returned, not because of crisis, but because they're tired of being temporary. They want roots, not contracts. And the world can't handle it. Japan just announced emergency partnerships to train Vietnamese and Indonesian caregivers because the Filipino pool is thinning. The UK sent diplomatic teams to Manila to strengthen bilateral ties. Translation, they're scared. The era of endless Filipino supply is ending, and global systems aren't built to survive without it. But let's be brutally honest. Can you blame Filipinos for wanting to come home? The remittances they send, more than $38 billion, 0 cents in 2024 alone, fuel our economy, yet many return to broken systems, low pay, and outdated industries. We celebrate their sacrifices with songs and speeches, but not with jobs or dignity. And that's where the shift needs to happen. Respect isn't applause, it's opportunity. If we want to stop this cycle, we need to flip the script. Imagine if the Philippines treated OFWs not as heroes, but as investors. Imagine building returnee programs where their foreign-earned skills create businesses, train new workers, and drive innovation at home. We don't need to export labor forever. We need to export leadership. Because the truth is, the world is addicted to Filipino excellence. And like any addiction, withdrawal will hurt. Here's a real story that sums it up. In Milan, a Filipino nurse named Carlo was offered permanent residency, full benefits, pension, the works. You know what he said? Thank you, but I want to go home. I've helped heal their people, now I want to help heal mine. That single sentence shook his employers because for once, it wasn't about the money. It was about pride. And that's the new wave coming. Filipinos who aren't just leaving to survive, but returning to build. This is where the power shifts from dependency to destiny. When Filipinos start seeing themselves not as the world's workers, but as the world's teachers, the balance changes forever. The panic you're seeing now from other countries, that's not fear of losing cheap labor. It's fear of losing competence. It's fear of losing the people who care enough to do the job right. Because let's face it, there's a difference between working hard and working with heart. And no one does both like a Filipino. But let me leave you with this. Respect earned abroad means nothing if it doesn't translate at home. If we can rebuild our systems, reform our industries, and create opportunities that match the global respect we've earned, then maybe, just maybe, Filipinos won't have to leave to be valued. So to everyone watching this, if you believe it's time for the Philippines to stop exporting heroes and start building them here, type vision in the comments. Because the world may panic when Filipinos leave, but imagine the revolution when Filipinos decide to stay. Because when the world realizes they can't survive without us, that's power. But when we realize we can thrive without them, that's freedom.